It's strange what your mind clings to when the world is collapsing. For me, it was the rattle of the air vent in the Dallas HR office, a cheap tin grill that hadn't worked since 2012. Much like the woman across from me blinking in manufactured sympathy. Effective immediately, she said, sliding an envelope across the table as if it carried a subpoena, not a final paycheck. I didn't bother opening it. After 18 years at Halden Systems, I knew the severance policy better than she knew her daily latte order. This is at the CFO's request, she added. Code for he didn't have the courage to look me in the eye. This was the same man who once called me mission critical when his sloppy budgets needed investor trust to cover the cracks. And now I was dismissed like a typo in a forgotten memo. The phrase that stuck was his smug promise: "We will control the narrative." That's when I knew he never understood what I actually did. To him, investor relations meant glossy charts and cheerful press releases. To me, it meant strategy, precision, and power. They expected tears, maybe a scene. Instead, I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that made the intern outside flinch. And while you're here, remember this: 97% of people listening to stories like this never subscribe. That's like draining the coffee pot and leaving it empty. If you love office drama and corporate revenge, hit that subscribe and like it fuels the team. Now back to the carnage. I rose calm as stone. No chair slamming, no begging. The HR rep gave me that awkward half smile meant to mimic empathy. "Ma'am, what's hard isn't losing my job," I told her. "What's hard is watching you pretend to be human." Walking back through the halls of Halden felt like drifting through a mausoleum. Colleagues who once praised me at all hands suddenly found deep fascination in their shoelaces and paper cups. One accountant gave me that pity blink you'd reserve for roadkill on the interstate. I didn't pack everything, just my chipped mug, my brass nameplate, and a photo of me and Daisy, my golden retriever from last Christmas. What I left behind mattered more: a slim black folder in my bottom drawer locked with the same desk key I'd carried for nearly 2 decades. Inside was the original quarterly report, not the polished lie the CFO planned to parade on Wall Street. But I didn't take it. I left it like a loaded trap waiting for whoever replaced me. Let them think they'd locked me out. Because here's the truth: after 18 years in investor relations, you don't just write the narrative, you schedule it, you own it. And someone forgot to revoke my admin access. By the time I stepped onto the Dallas sidewalk, the Texas heat pressing against my face, my heart wasn't racing. It was calculating. The smile on my lips. Not grief. Not loss. It was the smirk of a woman who knew she wasn't fired. She was freed. And the countdown had just begun. Even my favorite intern, Leah, the one I trained to color code stakeholder notes like a savant, suddenly became fascinated with the bottom of her empty coffee cup. I didn't cause a scene. Didn't rip down the mission statement poster or scream about betrayal. That would have given them too much closure. Let them stew in silence. My nameplate was already gone from the door-efficient little vultures. Someone must have scraped it off the minute I stepped into that HR tomb. In its place was a strip of duct tape with transitioning scrawled in Sharpie, like I was just another budget line being phased out. Inside my office, nothing had been touched. The air still smelled faintly of cinnamon gum and printer toner. My inbox was still open, blinking with this morning's urgent Q3 draft. I guess no one told it yet. Or maybe they assumed I'd vanish quietly like a relic too polite to resist. I picked up the few things that mattered: my chipped mug shaped vaguely like Ohio, the paperweight molded as a sinking ship, a gift from a boss who'd seen the writing on the wall years ago, the framed screenshot of that one earnings call where I made a Goldman Sachs analyst audibly gasp. Small, maybe, but mine. Then came the bottom drawer. My hand hesitated a moment before unlocking it. Inside the thin black folder, unremarkable on the outside, deadly within, the unedited quarterly report. Raw, brutal, factual. $48 million in outflows that didn't trace to any project. A neat little line item called unallocated consulting, as clear as swamp water at midnight. The kind of numbers makeup couldn't fix, no matter how much corporate lipstick the CFO tried to smear over them. I stared at it for a long moment. My fingers almost pulled it free. Almost. But no. Better to let them forget it was here. Let them assume I'd carried everything with me. Let the poor soul replacing me open this drawer next week expecting paper clips and sticky notes, only to find a financial pipe bomb stamped with dates and signatures. I locked the drawer, slipped the key into a small envelope, and left it on the desk with a note scrawled in my cursive, just tying up loose ends. The hallway felt longer than usual, as if the walls themselves had sprouted ears. A few coworkers lifted their heads, faces stiff with that clenched teeth sympathy reserved for funerals or canceled potlucks. One started, "If there's anything I can," but I raised an eyebrow and kept walking. "No, Brenda," I muttered under my breath. "You already liked the CFO's LinkedIn post." I passed the wall where my name once hung beside the annual investor awards. The plaques were still there, but I'd bet anything the new CFO was already scheming to rename them Team Achievements or some other empty buzzword. At the elevator, I caught my reflection in the glass. Not broken, not defeated, just still. Like a lake before a storm, every fish shifting sideways because they know what's coming. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. That would come later when they started scrambling. For now, I felt cold. Not cruel clear. Ice knows where it's going. And I was going home to finish what they started. I dropped my bag by Daisy's bowl and poured a glass of wine that was 70% spite and 30% Merlot. Then I opened my laptop. If my story struck a chord with you, hit subscribe, so you'll be right here with me when the next chapter unfolds. Because trust me, the best pages are still to come. Old stickers peeled at the edges, but it was reliable like me. I half expected a cold slap from a 403 access denied screen. Instead, there, it was the garish teal banner of the investor communications portal, my name still glowing in the admin corner. Idiots. The new, fresh face in my role must have been too busy posting boomerangs of her office chair to remember she hadn't built this system. I had. I wrote the scheduling protocols, the access layers, the update dependencies. Their shiny puppet had no idea she was standing on a trapdoor I'd installed back in 2012. Inside the portal, the quarterly draft sat smugly in the approval queue. Approved by the CFO pending final push. I opened it and clenched my jaw. I've seen more honesty in a used car listing. Revenue steady. Expenses managed through proactive initiatives. The unedited quarterly report. $48 million in outflows that didn't trace to any project. And that $148 million in phantom consulting disappeared. Just a footnote about seasonal variances and anticipated partnerships. Cotton candy language, sweet, weightless, destined to pop. No sources, no timestamps, just euphemisms. I closed it without saving and opened the real backups versions I'd quietly kept outside their cosmetic editing cycles. Because unlike the CFO's pet PR clone, I knew numbers are sacred. Bend them too far, and they snap back with teeth. There it was. Version 4.2 RR. Finalized 24 hours before my firing. Full ledger breakdown. Consultant costs listed to the cent. Project codes. Invoice references. 3 brutal paragraphs summarizing $48 137,026 in miscellaneous outflows, with no justification but plenty of fingerprints, most from the CFO's office. I read it one last time, steady as a bomb tech checking the red wire. Then I uploaded it. No edits, no spin, just facts. When the confirmation screen appeared, I scrolled to schedule release. The investor call was set for 9:00 a.m. sharp. I scheduled the truth for 8:59, 1 minute before their spin doctors could zip up their pants. 1 minute of silence before a very public, very irreversible bang. I hit confirm. The system blinked, scheduled. That was it. Quiet, simple, Dangerous. The raw numbers now locked and loaded, destined for every inbox from BlackRock to Henderson Equity to that aggressive Canadian fund that always asked the rudest questions. No alarms, no revoked access, nothing. Apparently, their IT team thought I'd gone quietly into that good night. I closed the laptop and sipped my wine, letting it coat my tongue like victory. Because here's the thing, they thought they'd erased me from the story. But I was still writing the ending. The hours after felt like waiting for a thunderclap only I could hear. I didn't pace. Didn't refresh the screen like I was tracking a pizza delivery. I waited like someone who already knew the pizza place was on fire and was just listening for sirens. The system never kicked me out. Not once. No warnings. No alerts. That silence told me everything I needed to know. They didn't understand what I'd done. And tomorrow morning, the truth would speak for itself. Not once did the system lock me out. No expired access. No flagged logins. The silence from it was almost romantic. These were the same people who bragged about zero-day threat detection, who claimed they could spot anomalies in real time. Yet apparently, a former employee with full admin privileges scheduling a public disclosure wasn't anomalous enough to trigger their filters. That told me everything. They hadn't even looked. I made dinner nothing fancy. Just chicken rice, and enough garlic to keep both vampires and guilt away. I walked Daisy, letting her sniff every mailbox as though we weren't about to light a seven-figure lie on fire. Back home, I poured another glass of wine and opened LinkedIn. That's when the notification hit. A cheerful ping, utterly oblivious. New hire posted for the first time. I clicked, already knowing what I'd find. Her photo had that bright, filtered glow that screams first job confidence. Beneath a boomerang of her grinning at the investor call prep table, the caption read, "So excited to gear up for our biggest quarter yet. Grateful for this amazing opportunity. Cheer new chapter. Cow, I our life." I nearly spit my wine. Amazing opportunity. Baby girl, you're standing in the middle of a minefield with a selfie stick. Her post already had likes, friends congratulating classmates, tagging her with "Yas girl" and "Watch you slay." I'd seen this dance 1,000 times. What got under my skin wasn't that she took my job. I'd made peace with the knife in my back years ago. No, it was the smugness. That parade of borrowed confidence from a company that thought investor relations was about vibes and ring lights. They forgot what kept me there 2 decades. I wasn't likable. I was undeniable. I knew what numbers could do when stripped of fluff and delivered cold. I toggled back to the portal. Still open. Still quiet. The numbers slept for now, but by morning they'd scream. I shut the browser and let the silence wrap me like a weighted blanket stitched from petty satisfaction. Across town, I imagined the CFO rehearsing buzzwords, momentum, strategic alignment in front of a mirror. He probably thought he'd buried me with some HR line about restructuring for agility. They really believed the story was theirs to tell. But tomorrow, the story would start with numbers. My numbers. And it would end with silence, the kind that breaks careers. I woke before the alarm. Didn't need it. Investor call mornings always carried that static charge like the sky seconds before lightning strikes. But this one was different. No blazer, no ID badge, no parking garage full of Teslas and lies. Just me barefoot in an oversized hoodie standing in the kitchen with the focus that only betrayal sharpens. I poured my coffee black. No sugar. Let it sting. My laptop hummed a wake screen flickering to the dashboard. Still logged in. Still mine. And somewhere in that beige fortress of cubicles, the new girl was probably spending her lunch break hunting for the semicolon key. But me, I didn't care about her anymore. I cared about the numbers. I cared about the numbers. I opened the system report. There it was, time-stamped, irreversible, live at 8:59 a.m., distribution triggered. Just beneath it, the list: 37 institutional recipients: Goldman Sachs, Fidelity, Vanguard. Even the cranky guy from Aberdeen Global, the one whose emails always carried too many exclamation points. They had it. I pictured them reading page 1, $48.37 to 6.14 in outflows no one could explain. Page 2, line items untouched, unsanitized. Page 3, data logs tracing a neon breadcrumb trail straight back to the CFO's office. And that was only the beginning. 42 pages total. I breathed steady. My heart didn't race. It was the calm of a sniper after the rifle's already aligned. This wasn't sabotage, it was clarity. This was what happens when someone says we'll control the narrative and forgets I'd been the one writing it for 15 years, building it, testing it, feeding it into executives who couldn't spell fiduciary without a deck full of bullet points. Now they were naked. No spin. No soft lighting. Just raw, ugly truth delivered with precision, every decimal carrying weight. I didn't smile. This wasn't gloating. This was gravity. Lies always fall. My coffee had gone cold, but I sipped anyway, watching the open rate climb. 37 became 42. Someone in Boston dove straight to the appendix. A West Coast hedge fund downloaded the PDF twice. Meanwhile, I imagined the CFO still in hair and makeup rehearsing buzzwords: momentum, alignment, transformation. He didn't know the ground had already given way. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait. At 9:00 sharp, the screen flickered to life. The same sterile investor background logo smirking in the corner. The participant list filled with private equity firms, hedge funds, and analysts who lived for dividend drama. But no banter this time. No good to see you, Jim, or how's Palm Beach, Marcy. Just silence. Heavy silence, the kind you feel in your throat before a tornado. I stayed muted, camera off. Usually the CEO opened with thanks, then handed off to the CFO. His voice always smooth, full of buzzword glitter: synergies, operational agility, shareholder value. Once he'd even described a $10 million loss as a temporary misalignment of forecast cadence. He could vomit confetti on command. But today, nothing. His name appeared at the top of the list. His gray bubble sat there, yet no breath, no nervous cough, not even the fake chuckle he used to soften bad news. 3 full minutes passed. Only the sound of someone adjusting their mic. Then finally, a voice. Not his. One of the sharper analysts from Bridgewater. Dry. Unimpressed. Well, he asked, "Are we going to hear from the CFO, or should we begin submitting written questions?" The silence that followed was heavier than any report I'd ever drafted. And I knew it was only the beginning. Will we be hearing from the CFO, or should we start submitting written questions? The voice was dry, impatient, an analyst from Bridgewater. Then another, clipped and British, probably dialing in from a London bank. "We've reviewed the published results. Some disclosures appear unclear. Is clarification coming?" Still no reply. The moderator. Poor Carol from IR, the same woman who once cried in a stairwell over a mislabeled chart Axis tried to cover. "Thank you everyone for joining. We're just waiting for the CFO to connect his audio." One moment. Liar. He was connected. I could see his name in the list. His bubble sat gray and silent. He wasn't muted. He was frozen, staring at the same numbers they were now dissecting like surgeons finding rot in the tissue. Every line item was a thread tugged loose by people who lived to sniff out inconsistencies and quietly call their brokers. Papers rustled. Someone coughed. No opening remarks. Just silence. At my kitchen table, I stayed perfectly still. Coffee cup half lifted, heart steady as a metronome. This wasn't adrenaline. It was clarity. The stillness before the dam bursts. I glanced at the participant count: 116 and climbing. They were all there: hedge funds, private equity analysts, refreshing PDFs, comparing numbers, watching the cracks spread. And the man meant to explain them, speechless. This wasn't tech trouble or a muted mic. This was paralysis. Fear. A man staring at truth he couldn't spin, surrounded by sharks trained to smell blood in the water. And me, I was the shark in the deep, smiling in silence. A chime announced another participant, some late hedge fund suit hoping for a front row seat. Still, the CFO stayed silent. His gray Zoom bubble hovered like a drunk uncle passed out at Thanksgiving. Then finally someone spoke. Not Carol. Not the CEO. Not the panicked comms director trying to stall with technical issues. The chairman. His voice fell like a guillotine. Can someone explain why our official release shows $48 million in unexplained outflows? No panic in his tone, just ice. The corporate cadence reserved for firing settlements and thinly veiled threats involving federal auditors. Then nothing. 60 seconds. 70. 90. The silence stretched until you could feel realization crawling across the call like a spider on silk. This wasn't a glitch. Not an intern mistake. This was real. Permanent. Published. They hadn't posted the wrong report. They'd posted the true one, and the CFO still said nothing. I imagined him in his office, fingers hovering above the keyboard, debating whether to fake a Wi-Fi crash or pull the fire alarm. This was the same man who once held a 30-minute call during a market freefall without blinking. Yet here, faced with a single line item he couldn't bury, he folded. Years of swagger metrics polished into magic tricks, all of it dissolved under the weight of one undeniable number. I watched from my kitchen table, spoon deep in a tub of Greek yogurt I wasn't even tasting. And for the first time all morning, I smiled. Not a smug grin, not an evil laugh, just a quiet curve of the lips, the kind of smile you give when the universe finally catches up with people who thought they were smarter than gravity. They thought I was disposable, that I'd vanish, leaving them free to rewrite the ending. But I didn't need revenge. I only needed the truth to be loud enough. And right now, it was echoing through every Bluetooth headset on that call. 2 minutes of silence. 2 minutes that stretched into eternity for him and into satisfaction for me. At last, the CFO unmuted around the 203-second mark. His voice cracked like a dropped wine glass. Yes. Thank you, Chairman. That particular line item refers to transitional consultant costs and, deferred initiatives associated with legacy systems integration. Even he didn't believe it. You could hear it in the hesitation, the way he tried to stitch a parachute out of buzzwords mid-fall. Investors pounced. Which systems exactly? Snapped a voice from JP Morgan. Was this disclosed in prior guidance? Pressed a man from CalPERS, suspicion tight in his tone. Why are these consultants unnamed in the appendix? Came a calm drawl from an Austin firm, the same one that once killed a merger over a misplaced semicolon. The CFO tried to volley back with filler. We remain confident in our strategic direction. These figures reflect forward-looking investments. But the energy had shifted. No one was buying it. No one was playing nice. He started reading directly from a document, probably the fluff draft he thought had gone live. But his words stumbled out of sync with the raw numbers staring every investor in the face. I could almost hear the background chorus of spreadsheet tabs opening. Analysts connecting dots, cross-checking line items, whispering into headsets. The smell of blood was unmistakable. I toggled to the market feed. The stock had already dipped 3% within the first 5 minutes. By the 10-minute mark, down 6.4%. Not a crash, not yet, more like a car sliding on black ice tires, spinning, no traction in sight. I took another sip of coffee. Lukewarm, but perfect. In my chest, no adrenaline, no vengeful thrill, just peace. This was it. My part was finished. I wasn't a hacker planting viruses. I hadn't doctored files. I didn't sneak around or sabotage. All I did was stop protecting them. I let the numbers speak. And now the truth was burning down their stage. They could scramble, circle back, issue clarifications. They could hire emergency PR firms to spin new narratives before the market closed. But it didn't matter. because the damage was already in the bloodstream. The fear, the distrust, the dawning realization that the one person who had made them look trustworthy was gone, and in her place, a newcomer tweeting gifs and praying for do-overs. As for me, I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. No press interviews, no cryptic LinkedIn posts, no anonymous tweets. I didn't need a spotlight. I had the receipts. The unraveling had already begun, and I was content to sit at my kitchen table watching the thread snap. Then a new voice cut in, calm, deliberate, heavy with authority. This is Stephen Blackwell representing our institutional clients who currently hold approximately 12.4% of the float. The effect was instant. Every other voice fell silent. And then the sentence that closed the coffin. We'll be taking this discussion offline. It wasn't a request, not an invitation, a verdict. In that moment, the oxygen was vacuumed out of the call. Everyone knew what those words meant. It meant lawyers. It meant boardroom doors slamming shut. It meant someone in that glass tower was about to be handed early retirement wrapped neatly in a non-disclosure agreement. The CFO tried to recover his voice, trembling like a man staring at his own obituary being drafted in real time. Of course, happy to clarify offline, he stammered. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. The screen-stuttered cameras froze. And then, as if the platform itself had grown tired of hosting the wreck, the call simply ended. No closing remarks. No polished thank you for your continued trust. Just a pixelated cliff where a company's credibility used to stand. I set my coffee mug down, noticing the ring it left on the counter. The silence in my kitchen felt heavier than the silence on that call. But it wasn't the silence of dread. It was the silence of finality. The truth had spoken. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. It wasn't triumph, I felt it was closure. They thought they'd buried me with some boilerplate HR script, that I'd walk away reduced to a footnote. Instead, they'd underestimated the one thing I'd carried with me through every quarter, every crisis, every sleepless night. I knew the power of numbers. They bend, they stretch, they disguise. But left unchecked, they break, and they break loudly. Now the reckoning was theirs. Somewhere in Dallas, the CFO was probably pacing his office, wondering which lawyer to call first, or whether resigning before the market closed would save face. But none of that mattered. Because for once, I didn't have to carry it. I wasn't their fixer anymore. I wasn't the one smoothing the narrative, gluing over the cracks, or dressing up bad numbers in prettier language. I had done the simplest, most devastating thing. I had stopped protecting them. And now their empire was unraveling thread by thread. I closed the laptop. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the steady thump of my own heartbeat. No anger, no gloating, just peace. Because finally, the numbers were free. I sat in my Dallas kitchen, letting the silence sink in around me. The coffee on the counter had gone stone cold, but it didn't matter. I refreshed the market feed with one hand, eyes steady. There it was. Ticker halted. Reason pending material disclosure. 4 words in corporate speak that landed like a death sentence. The SEC's siren song. I pictured the chaos unraveling downtown. Phones ringing off the hook. HR scrambling for scripts. Lawyers squinting at screens already drafting statements. And poor Carol from IR probably crying into her ergonomic keyboard, realizing this wasn't a typo she could fix. They'd figure it out soon enough. It wasn't a leak. Not a breach. No angry email. No messy whistleblower letter. It was just me doing exactly what they'd once paid me to do, tell the truth. They swore they'd control the narrative. They said they'd decide how the story ended. That I was replaceable. Forgettable. Another casualty of a strategic shift. But the numbers hadn't forgotten. And neither had I. This wasn't revenge. This was an audit. A final line item that couldn't be buried in consultant fees or massaged into strategic investments. I closed the laptop, leaned back, exhaled. The breath felt like an entire fiscal year leaving my body. Let them try to spin it. It was already written. And this time, it was permanent. I looked around my quiet kitchen, the chipped mug still on the table, Daisy's leash hanging by the door. Life would move forward, slow and steady, while their empire unraveled in boardrooms and court filings. I didn't need the spotlight. I didn't need applause. All I needed was the truth loud enough to stand on its own. So if you've stuck with me this far, remember this: 97% of you watching don't subscribe. That's like draining the coffee pot and leaving it empty. If you want more stories of boardroom betrayals, office revenge, and corporate chaos, hit that subscribe and tap the like button. Because trust me, this isn't the last time the numbers will speak. And your ex-colleagues? They won't even know what hit them. I've told you my side of the story, but now I want to hear yours. Do you see yourself in my shoes? Have you ever given years, maybe decades, to a company only to be treated as if your worth was just a line on a spreadsheet? Share your thoughts in the comments, not just for me, but for everyone out there who's lived through the same betrayal. Every story matters. Every voice adds weight to the truth. When you comment, you're not only standing with me, you're standing with every worker who's been underestimated, dismissed, and then quietly proved indispensable. And here's the lesson I hope you'll carry: silence can be more powerful than shouting. You don't always need to burn bridges in flames. Sometimes it's enough to simply stop holding them up. Numbers, facts, and truth, they don't need theatrics. They just need to be released. In life, remember this: people may try to write you out, but if you know your value, you will always hold the pen. Support this channel, subscribe, and stay with me, because this story doesn't end here. Together, we'll make sure none of us ever walk away forgotten.